Yes, we are live. We are live back again with Brother Neil Frazier. I just want to say before we start, we had some serious technical issues with the buffering of the internet, which did not allow me to forward over to this particular platform the illustrations that he had to show during his dialogue with us. What I can do afterward on LanceScurv.com, on this particular post on LanceScurv.com, I will take those images before the night is over, and I'll have them all below of the images that he spoke on. So even as you speak of the images, we won't see them during the live broadcast, but you'll see them in chronological order on LanceScurv.com under the post that geopolitical chess, immigration and reparations, jungle politics, the one that's there. But if you wait too long, we do so much work here, it'll scroll down. So we'll make sure to have that through. And I apologize, but there recently have been a lot of mishaps on a technical level. And for some reason, if I happen to fall off, Brother Neil, I'll be back on my phone. So we got to be ready. This program is set up in the cloud, so you won't fall off. And
okay, great.
Just bear with us. Everything seems to be going smooth right now. We just had to make those changes. And the reason why I didn't have the graphics is because my Facebook Messenger that you send it on, I didn't see any messages there from the 1st of January. But earlier I saw it, and they're gone, and it wouldn't open up. So not to start the show, it's not a negative note. It's just to be informative, let you know that sometimes there are obstacles, and sometimes this one here did not make any sense. But we're still going to move on forward anyway. And I'm glad to be back here with you. Like I said, 2 days ago, it was last Monday. This week went by so fast. But
yeah,
it's a good thing because we can look forward to some quality content, information done and presented in a good spirit. And that's the main thing. You don't have the spirit of arrogance. You're not condescending. You're a brilliant man, and I thank you for, sharing your presence with us. I'm not pouring it on too thick, but too many times in this life, we don't tell the people that we love and that add on to our existence and ascend us enough while they're here. It could be me, it could be you. One day, unfortunately, you may hear about me or I may hear about you, but while we're both here together, I'm going to always give you your props, because you're right on point with everything that you do, and our lives are better because you're in them. Thank you so much. The floor is yours, brother.
Yeah, well, thank you, Brother Lance, always for the kind words. And it's important for us to remember, and I agree with you that when a person is no longer around in your cloud or in your space, then sometimes you have regrets about, wow, I wish I would have said this, or I wish I would have done that. And so, yeah, you're spot on. That's something that I try to do myself. And I just want to say, again, as always, that I'm very grateful to be able to be on your platform, to share with you. And I want to greet everyone in the family. And, we as a people, we're facing a lot of different obstacles on a daily basis. And sometimes we get so caught up into things that happen here, and with our own lives, until we fail to see the big picture. And the people that it affects the most are our children. So today we're going to deal with the subject that I know is very important to Black people, because it's affecting us in some of our major cities. But we're going to get to the heart of this whole situation, why it exists, how it actually came into manifestation, and what we're going to do about it. Again, one of the main things that we have to focus on is now this new multicultural environment that our children are growing up in, that will change everything from the way that we know it now. So, as Lance said, the name of the show today is Geopolitical Chess, Immigration and reparations, which is actually jungle politics. So we have 12 subjects we're going to go through real quickly, or maybe not so quickly. But again, we're going to shed some light on this subject and look at it from a different perspective so we can have a full understanding and comprehension of what we are facing. Number one, we're going to talk about the global capitalists, the corporations. Um, they are the ones that caused the collapse of the Central American economy. This was orchestrated intentionally by using something called hyperinflation. And in this case, we're talking about runaway hyperinflation. This was orchestrated just like they did in the motherland, where back in the 70s and 80s, the major oil corporations of the United States pretty much began sucking the Central and South American countries dry. We're also going to talk about the replacement players, the people that are immigrating to this country are like replacement players, because the system is not going to change. It's constantly looking for, you know, the peasant serf type of environment to establish in order to continue the greed and the profits that they live off unjustly. Some of the characteristics that the immigrants have that will allow them to be replacement players, and why this was intentionally set up, is number one, they're very religious. They're just as religious as Black folks. Okay. The other thing is that they will increase corporate profits because, let's face it, they'll work for slave wages. They'll work for wages that you and I and others are not going to work for. But one of the big things and one of the big reasons why this is being done almost like an invasion is because many of them do not comprehend the English language, particularly synonyms, antonyms, and homonyms. And so there's a lot of confusion in terms of them dealing with English speaking people in English situations and in any region of the country that they go to. Because we know as Americans, the vernacular for different people depends on the region of the country they either grew up in or that they're living in. Also, they are the new stock market. Okay, they are the new investments. So our social security number and our birth certificate are security bonds for the government. Secret bank accounts are set up on all U.S. citizens. This was done in 1933 when the United States had to declare bankruptcy. And as payment for this huge debt, all Americans, okay, were used as separate accounts. Each American that has a social security number and a birth certificate. Now, why is this important? Because the hundreds of thousands of immigrants that are coming to this country now, they have new accounts, okay, that they can trade on the stock market and that they can make new investments from just by them being here in this country. We're going to talk about jungle politics, survival of the fittest, where they're creating cultural conflict. Okay, this is by design. We're talking about the nature of fiat being exposed, which is the spirit of competition. that's set up, again, to create cultural conflict and survival of the fittest. Because certainly we see that many of the cities where the immigrants are going, they are hanging on by a thread. Okay, and the real purpose is to collapse these economies so that they can use the same playbook of plantation politics, where the people at the bottom will be competing for the little crumbs that fall off the table. Also, they're going to use this as an excuse not to pay reparations, because the truth being told is that now that they have the replacement players, they feel like, okay, well, we've used you, we've gotten what we need from you, so we no longer have an obligation to you and your children. Also, we're going to talk about how we went from pyramids to projects. Okay, mainly the mindset reversal. Hate is the new narrative. Okay, hate your neighbor, not love your neighbor. This is the Babylonian reality and religious deception, or scriptural deception, where people are being told or preached to about love, when in reality, the seeds that are manifested are all hate, because greed is America's real God. Okay, so if that means stepping over you to get it, or anyone that looked like you, guess what's going to happen? Also, we're going to talk about the fact that they've created this desperation, okay, by creating instability and chaos. And why is this done? Because of the prison industrial complex, in which they intend to incarcerate more Black and brown men. And now we have the new ghettos that are forming. Okay, Latin America and the United States, it's the poverty playbook. This is the playbook that they have always used. They will continue to use, because like the old adage, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And this is the way that the system operates. You know, like they say, there's nothing new under the sun. You're just replacing people, you know, in each stage of manifestation. But we have to remember, as Dr. John Henry Clarke always reminded us, that we have no friends. And if you don't know what that means that you, as Black people, are on your own. Because the people that are coming to this country, they have been conditioned, okay, by design, even in the countries they come from, that that Black people are bad, and that we are, you know, the ones that create crime. So all of these negative things are being told to people who have no idea what the real situation is. But because they listen to the narratives, they look at the same CNN and other news that we do. So, you know, they're given some extra sauce, you know, to really put Black people in a bad light. And we'll talk about that in a minute, but this is a form of social upheaval, okay? Almost like gentrification in that sense. And this is the big reset for 2024 that Black people are not aware of. Okay, so we must recognize what time it is and become proactive. Then we have the neo-colonialism, which is the use of economic, political, cultural, or pressure to control or influence other countries, especially former dependencies. So these former countries in Central America and South America who were dependent on America because the corporations actually put them in that situation. It's the same playbook as the motherland and here. And more importantly, if you remain in your current mindset in 2024, you will be neutralized and incapacitated. Now let's talk about how we got to this point. Let's talk about how this whole immigration crisis thing happened. All right, as I was mentioning earlier, there is a term in economics called hyper inflation. Okay, and this is used by the capitalists to dictate the flow of a country. Okay, if you read this book, The Economic Hitman, it goes into some of this, but we know we're going to look at some statistics that a lot of this stuff is planned, just like what's happening now in 2024 was planned 20, 30 years ago. Okay, so we know that the Nixon administration basically sold the American people out to China in 71. Well, during that same time, in the 70s and 80s, is when they began to destabilize by taking all the resources and causing this hyperinflation to rise. Okay, so this was a plan to destabilize Central and South America because they have always looked for a way to replace you. Okay, and these numbers are really staggering when you look at it. The average Central American country experiences 50% inflation each month. Take Argentina, 100% inflation is what really destabilized that country. Okay. Venezuela. Now, as hard as these numbers are to believe, this is the reason why we see hundreds and thousands of people coming to this country. Venezuela has an hyperinflation rate of 249%. Now, to give you some perspective about this, what is considered a high inflation rate here is 5%. So you kind of starting to get the picture now. And this is considered a high inflation rate, 5%. But when we look at Central American countries at 124%, like Argentina, and Venezuela at 249%, now you're talking about a situation where 50% of the people from these countries are living in abject poverty. Okay. Now, how did this come about? $44 billion was given to Argentina by the IMF. And this caused a ripple effect because once the American corporations began to divest their interest in them after taking all the resources and what they needed, the same playbook, then, they basically left them high and dry. And then that caused a $16 billion legal tab that they owed to the US because they were unable to pay their debts. And the US is in lockstep with the IMF. So on an average, the average inflation every month is between 38.9 and 50% in Latin American countries. Okay. To give you some more perspective, the current US inflation rate is 3.14%. So again, When you look at a country like Venezuela, 249% hyperinflation, because we know the fiat has no value. This is a perfect example. This is what they're planning to do to you, is that you know this fiat has no value. So it causes this type of hyperinflation, 124%, 249%. This is why people are forced out of their countries, okay? And this is by design. It's not because of no gangs and none of that. Of course, that exists in every society, but that is not the fundamental reason why hundreds of thousands of people are immigrating from these Central American and South American countries. Okay, it is strictly economics. So, in other words, every dollar they have is worth about 2 cents, if you want to get a real perspective on that. Okay, and also they deflated the value of the peso as well. Now, the other thing that's happening, the social aspect of this, or the social economic aspect of this, is that it's going to cause a clash of cultures. Okay. And this is the new form of the destruction of Black civilization. How and why? Because now it's going to be Black versus brown. As I said, the peasants and the serfs, okay, that are at the lowest level of this economic hierarchy. And the ones who, here's the other thing too, and I said this in another video, that is it just by coincidence that the two most religious cultures in the Americas, which is Black people and brown people, are at the bottom of the economic ladder, when the two cultures that don't practice this religion, the Asians and the East Indians, are at the top, along with the whites? That's something to think about. The other thing that's going to happen, okay, they're going to use the weapons they're going to use. They're going to use unemployment. Okay, that is going to be a major situation facing our children coming up, because again, the wages that we need to live by here, the people coming to this country, because they have been under this social clinical experiment, socioeconomic experiment for decades, they are now immune to that. So if you can imagine the average person living off of $10 a week, well, they come here and they can make $250, $300 a week by working for $5 or $6 an hour. That's a no-brainer. So it's just like when you have a rat in a lab and you condition them a certain way, then the rat is not going to want to get shocked anymore. So it's going to be, you know, subject to your will. Also, the prison industrial complex is going to increase. Okay. This is what I mean by the new stock market. These private prisons are on the stock market. Why is this going to happen? Because it's going to be increase in burglaries. Black men are not going to have any jobs. I'm not making any excuses for anyone. I'm just telling the reality of it. There's going to be an increase in robberies. There's going to be an increase in carjackings. And we've seen this play out in our communities decade after decade, where Black men are standing on the corner. No one is hiring them. And even if they go to try to get hired, they're going to be discriminated against, because I did an employment study myself for 6 months. And you cannot go directly to any employer now. You have to go through these agencies who know when a black person is applying for a job. Okay, the artificial intelligence has already given you a profile, so they know this. So they don't have to do it in your face anymore. They can do it behind your back, and you don't know who it is. The other thing that's going to happen is the housing crash. Okay, and this is the manufacturing of homelessness and the coming food crisis. You know, any day I can go out here, I can see people digging in the trash can. They want to say people have mental health problems. Yeah, they do. Because if you're on the street for any length of time, you're going to develop certain psychological issues. And when you're hungry, you don't care where the food is coming from. You're just trying to get it. And so if it's in a garbage can and you're hungry, guess what? You're going to go in that garbage can. But you're going to see more and more Americans, particularly Black Americans, because of course, when America has a cold, we get the flu. Okay, you're going to see more and more Black Americans in these conditions where they're manufacturing homelessness on a massive scale. And one of the things that is happening here now is when you go to buy eggs, now they're saying that the hens have the flu. So there's a shortage of eggs wherever you go to try to buy them. So you can imagine what's going to happen as a result of that. Eggs are going to start now being $10, you know, for 12 eggs, a dozen of eggs. And this is, see, what most people don't know is these retail stores, they can mark up something as high as they want. There is no ceiling. Okay. And this is what's going to start happening. Okay. It's happening now. We're just not fully aware of it. Also, the fiat conspiracy. Okay. Hustling for peanuts, where you're going to see more and more Black men out here. Well, we've always had to hustle to survive, but now you're going to see different extremes of this, because now you're going to have the immigrants that are coming here. They're forced to do the same thing. And when you're talking about jungle politics, you're talking about survival of the fittest. And the people who you see as the biggest threat to your survival, again, setting up the Black and brown cultural conflict, that is who you're going to have the biggest problem with. Okay. And this is going to set up a turf war between Black and brown cultures. You can see this. You can see it on the internet, where they have already begun to play this game. Many of these people are, you know, they're not trying, no matter what they're being labeled as, many of them, just like the Great Migration that we talked about with Black people, and also when we talked about the Indian Removal Act, many of them are seeking a better quality of life, because no one wants to live in this world and have no hope, particularly for their children. That is a bad situation to be in. And Black folks more than anybody know this. However, okay, however, we cannot allow the country to be invaded without anything in place to stop this, because again, they're going to come to the Black community. They're not going to go to the suburbs. Okay. And if they do, there's going to be a big outcry. I saw something on the TV the other day. So you see, this jungle politics is set up where they're pulling the strings, where they are putting black and brown people who are at the lowest in the totem pole against each other through cultural wars. And then we have the skin game, okay, where you have white versus black, brown versus black, black versus black, yellow versus black, and we have the hidden science of genetics, which is at the root of this, okay? But we know that this is low vibratory behavior or caterpillar behavior, because you cannot operate a system that keeps people in a perpetual state of poverty or plantation politics or jungle politics without, you know, using all of these different weapons, almost like the Willie Lynch theory, okay? When they use all these different weapons against you in order to keep you in perpetual debt and poverty. So one of the things that, before we get back into the text, that I want to talk about, because it just seems like for some reason we have taken our eyes off of our children. They're going to be the ones that are going to suffer the most, as I said earlier, in this new multicultural reality. So let's talk about the future vision for Black children in this new multicultural reality, because believe it or not, our children can be our salvation. Okay, they can be, if we take some specific steps right now to make sure we change the direction we've been going in and make sure we set a new course, a new path for them. And again, I want to remind people that, you know, we are a Black think tank, so we focus on the issues that affect our people. So, you know, if you got a problem with that, I'm sorry for you, because they have think tanks set up all over the world, okay, for people, European people, to deal with their issues. They have think tanks for every group in the United States that deals with their issues. So this is something that's very important for us to now focus on. We can't worry about what's going on with other people, because those people are not worried about what's going on with us. Okay, so what's going to happen to, what's the future vision for Black children in this new multicultural reality? The number one thing is that you or we cannot continue to use the developmental psychology of white children, okay, to teach Black children. This is the number one issue facing the future education of our children. I'll say this again. We cannot continue to use the developmental psychology of white children, okay, to teach Black children. Okay, and this is the number one issue that we're facing in the future education of our children. Why? The reason why we can't do this is because the genetic, biological, and cultural history of a child is present in their psychological growth and development. And being an American means something different, okay, to Black children and white children. Our children's growth and development is unique, okay, and it's unique because, again, they carry the complete encoding of our history and what they call the trauma gene, okay, and they cannot be the physical and psychological duplicate of white children. Also, the nutritional, psychological, and cultural experiences of Black mothers affects our children tremendously, even in the womb, for various reasons. Okay. But in his book, The Magical Child, Pierce talks about our children. One of the graphics that I sent you, Lance, was the 3 Black children, all under the age of 10, that has the highest recorded IQ in the world. Okay, and the thing is what is this IQ going to be used for? We're going to talk about that. But in this book, The Magical Child, Pierce made the following observation from this study, that the natural psychomotor responses are present earlier in Black children, okay, than children from all other groups. Okay, so their psychomotor skills are vastly developed at a much quicker rate than children from all other groups. They recognize their names, their parents' names, and the names of objects in their immediate environment almost 8 months earlier than other children. So finally, let's talk about education. What is the real purpose of education? We are still educated to be servants, okay? And this is something we must change with our children. We must prepare the youth to lead, and their natural leadership skills have to come to the forefront. The problem is what I was explaining earlier, that the psychological growth and development of our children cannot be based on the dominant culture, the children from the dominant culture. This is what confuses them. All right, but we measure growth and development by our relationship to our reality, not the denial of it. And again, I mentioned in one of the videos that studying the work of our 2 great psychiatrists, Frantz Fanon and Dr. Francis Cress Welsing, they both said the same thing, that we deny or we turn a blind eye away from our pain and the reality of what we're dealing with. Okay, so I want to make this statement again, that we measure growth and development, or how mature a person is, by our relationship to our reality and not denial of it. But schools are instruments of your oppression. Why? What is intelligence? This is what they're not telling you. Okay. What is intelligence in relationship to educating your young? It is to maintain your survival economically.